Hey, you wild women. Welcome to another episode of Into the Wild. I am your host, Renee Warren, and today we're talking about all things pivots. Why this particular topic came up was because I am, as you may know, launching the Pink Skirt Project. It is so far an event that is being hosted very soon, June 12th in Kelowna, BC. Gathering 350 women in a room, this has been a dream of mine forever. And for those who've known me for quite some time, know that I came from the world of public relations. And people keep asking me, hey, Renee, what are you up to these days? Because they don't really see me talking about PR anymore. They see that we're traveling as a family, so they just assume maybe I'm not doing anything. And I gotta say, I'm not insulted by that because I'm all over my social media. You'll know. I sold my PR agency last year. I've been in the world of public relations and running an agency forever, and I'm not anymore. And I feel so at ease with this choice. However, there were some things I had to go through, and I figured, you know what? I want to share the process that I went through. I want to share the emotions I've had in changing from a life in an agency, being super profitable, landing clients, quote, easily, because that's how I positioned myself for years, to now doing one of the riskiest business models ever, hosting an event. So we are here today to talk about the permission to pivot. I'm going to reflect on this as something that we do in business, but it could be something that we do in our health. For instance, I pivoted from being hardcore CrossFit for 10 years. Sometimes I would go 6 days a week, to not really doing CrossFit anymore. Maybe, I don't know, once a week or a handful of times a month. And the reason why is because of what we call new information. I have learned that for a woman going through perimenopause, for a woman experiencing some of the symptoms that I'm experiencing in this wonderful season of my life, that I should not be doing certain HIIT workouts. So I've pivoted, new information, pivot. And I want you to use that as a signal for things in your life when you need to pivot. This could be a new career. This could be a new relationship. It could be how you're educating your kids, raising your kids, the car you drive. Think of that pivot as a new opportunity, not of anything because you failed at something. So I want to talk about this. We think that the straightest path to success is a straight path. You start at A and you get to Z and it's a straight line. But it's actually a zigzag of strategic redirections. Those messy, uncomfortable moves that you've made in business and life, they aren't disruptions in your journey. They're actually your biggest opportunities for breakthrough growth. Sometimes, like on an airplane, you hit turbulence. It doesn't mean the plane's going to come down. Rarely ever has turbulence ever brought a plane down. It's just that there's a change in air pressure. There's hot air rises and cold air, and it causes the wings to kind of shake. I actually don't know the mechanics of that, but I think that sounds about right. But just know that in life, we reach these points that are turbulent. And if you're a pilot, sometimes your instruments will tell you whether or not you're coming up to an area that has been probably identified as an area of disturbance where there's turbulence. Sometimes you can go around it, sometimes you can go over it, and sometimes you have to go through it. But if there is a possibility that you make a slight pivot off your course, because the plane is trying to get to directly to their destination, but to go around something, that is okay. And my shift out of doing PR was almost within the making since the day I started. So quick story is I started a PR agency when I was 8 months pregnant with my first son, Max, in that same year that we grew. Clients from South Africa to San Diego, a team of 12. I welcomed my second son. And it was a great time. We were super profitable, but I was just dying inside. At the time, the agency was doing social media, content marketing, and public relations for our clients. We called ourselves a demand marketing agency. We did not really have the infrastructure in place to do that very well. So over the course of a year, we identified that our highest profit margins came from offering just public relations services. So we scrapped everything else and we focused just on offering PR. That's kind of like a pivot because we went from being a demand marketing agency for funded tech startups to a public relations agency. Now that brought us our time back. We were more creative, and eventually I became less anxious. But the pivot eventually led to us being more successful. Things picked up again, and eventually I got so overwhelmed and so burnt out because it was an industry I didn't know, I didn't love. We defaulted to becoming a PR agency. I was specialized in content and social media, not PR, but my business partner was. So we did it. And it was successful and it was great, but it was just gnawing at me after she left. And then I closed it down. Then I started another agency because, get this, and we'll talk about this, I had positioned myself as an expert in the world of public relations that for me to actually land clients was easy. I came up with brilliant and a billion content ideas to promote myself on social. So people started asking me to speak on their podcast, to speak at their events, to train their people on all things PR. I never loved the industry. I denied myself the truth about what I was doing because everything else came so easy. It came so easy that I was getting all these clients that I just told myself, I'm going to stay the course because this is what I'm known for. But I wasn't actually being true to myself. I want to give you a couple other examples of pivots that give you the permission that you think you might need from everybody else to make a pivot. My now new friend, Lori Harder, who's also speaking at the Pink Skirt Project, before her product now, which she's known for is Glossy, which is a skin routine you can drink, she was launching Light Pink, which was an alcoholic beverage, but she launched it during the pandemic. That was not by design. And what happened was she reached all these legal complexities and regulatory hurdles, and she couldn't get cans to fill her product. So she eventually had to pivot. So instead of continuing to force her concept with all of these mounting obstacles, she leveraged her existing network and expertise in the wellness industry to create an innovative beauty supplement. As far as I know, she's crushing it. I have the product Glossy. I use it every day. It actually makes me feel a lot better. So I know it's almost like a 180 pivot going from an alcohol beverage to now a powdered supplement. But let me tell you, it just made a lot more sense. The other example is a lady named Melanie Perkins. I don't know if you know the product called Canva. We use it. 165 million other people use it as well. She pivoted from her first venture, which was called Fusion Books. It was a yearbook creation platform to eventually launch what has now become Canva after identifying a broader opportunity, because she understood that the design world was very complicated, that in order to come up with some sort of a decent design, you had to hire an expert or become an expert because the tools and the software and the technology being used back then was so complicated and bulky and robust. So I'm going to hold up a little, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm holding up a little poster I made for the Pink Skirt Project that I did in Canva with the help of my assistant. And it was quick and easy. So she identified that there was an issue in the marketplace. She started with the concept of creating your own yearbooks to eventually this becoming applicable in a much larger, broader thing. So these pivots are just examples of women that made bold moves to go and pursue something because they recognize there's an opportunity in the marketplace that if they kept doing what they were originally doing, they'd eventually burn out or get too much in the red, that they'd have to shut the doors. The same was true for me when it came to PR. So I don't want to say that I asked permission to pivot. No, I didn't. I felt with such conviction that I needed to go and do this thing called the Pink Skirt Project, that it was so easy for me to get out of the world of PR. With that decision, allowed me to bring in the person who would eventually buy the company. It was like the perfect exit. So here's the problem and why we often resist pivots is that there's this notion of the sunk cost fallacy, meaning that you've put all this time and effort and resources into creating something that it almost seems like a waste of money if you're stopping, slowing down, or pivoting. So I think about that in the world of PR, all the content that I've created online, all the time I've spent, and all the people I've hired to help me promote myself as the go-to person in the world of PR seems like a sunk cost. But not only am I happier now, my content's more engaging, I'm getting more followers and more people commenting, liking, and sharing because I'm more aligned with the work that I'm doing. There's also this massive identity crisis of abandoning what you've built. So if you're like a fitness model and all of a sudden you want to pivot to something else, like creating the best water bottles or something, there's this identity crisis now that you're no longer the person that is working out all the time in a bikini on stage competing to becoming somebody more behind the scenes. The biggest thing, I think, for most people is that there's a fear of judgment from others who have witnessed your original direction. I've seen that, and even to this day, I still get it, that people judge those who make the change. The reality is nobody cares. People are watching, but it's not like you're the Kardashians, and even if you were, nobody cares. And then there's this myth of sticking it out as the only path to success, thinking that, well, I got this far, I've invested all these resources, people know me for this one thing, I may as well just stay here and just do this thing for the rest of my life because I don't want to disappoint my father, whose business I bought. I don't want to disappoint my neighbor who thinks that I'm the bee's knees because I do this thing. You do not have to stick it out if it doesn't make sense for you. So how you come out of this, first of all, I want to ask you, is there something in your life you need to pivot? There probably is. Everybody has a little something. And where does that feeling come up in your body when I say it's time to make that change? In your chest, in your heart, your head? I get it in my chest. It's like this anxiety thing. Whenever I need to make a pivot in something, a pivot in plans, it's hard because I don't want to upset people, but also I don't know the level of work or complexity that's going to happen on the other side of making the shift. So here's what you need to do. You need to go from thinking this is a failure to knowing it's an evolution. Reframing pivots from giving up to growing up. Sometimes you just need to adapt or else you will become extinct. Doesn't this all make sense? Smart pivots are actually signs of wisdom and not weakness, because if you kept going the course knowing that you're getting into the red and you're just going to keep going, it's like you're going down a hole and there's no way out. And the only way out is for you to stop and change direction completely. And that's okay. Oftentimes in business, there's the biggest clear indicator of a time for a change is the market will tell you. Perfect example, Kodak. Don't know the details of the story perfectly, but I do know that they resisted and refused to pivot to digital cameras, and look at where they are now. When you resist the need for change and pivots, when the market is signaling that it's time to take a change, you will fail. And I will say the only time failure actually happens in the world of pivots is when you don't make that evolution. So here's the benefits that are often hidden in these pivots. One, renewed energy and motivation. You're happier. Your nervous system is calmer. You have better alignment with evolving strengths. You are increased profitably. You're more profitable and your work becomes more sustainable. You enjoy doing it. It happens easier. You get enhanced market positioning, all these things. And sometimes the pivot isn't about changing direction completely, but maybe it's about removing a service offering or removing a product line. I had a client once, she had a beauty brand on the East Coast, and she was really known for all of her creams and gels and stuff for moms. So like moms that are pregnant or just had a baby and like baby stuff. But she still kept making products for creams for women of any age. And she also made a line for men, like beard oils and shaving creams and stuff. But she was known for the baby creams, like the butt rash cream and nipple creams and all that stuff. So I said to her, wouldn't it just make sense for you to just remove those products from your service offering and then focus on the things that are selling well? And she said, yeah, but I have a handful of clients who like the oil beard or the beard oil. Yeah, but I already have all of these things and all these products that I have to sell. Remember the sunk cost fallacy? Yeah, but I've known for these things. So with her, she had all of the materials that she still needed to use to make some of the products, from like the beard oil to whatever. And she refused to let that be a sunk cost. So she kept the course. When you offer too many things, it becomes confusing to people. And that means you're not making things very well. For example, a restaurant. And I always use this example of a menu. When you go to a restaurant and you're like, this is a Mexican, Italian, Asian infusion, and they hand you the menu and you open it up and there's 200 items. It's confusing because nobody goes to a restaurant and they say, you know what, maybe I want Mexican or Italian or Asian. I don't know. When I get there, I'll feel it. No, people say, I feel like eating Italian tonight or Mexican or Indian. And they've already made the decision before they enter your restaurant. So you have to decide what you are. And the pivot in those instances would be like, wait a second, 90% of our people come through that door and they want Mexican food. Well, guess what kind of restaurant you are? So the pivots, or the fallacy of the sunk cost, is that maybe you already have things invested in creating those products. As an example, I say sell them, use them as gifts. Try to sell the raw materials, but remove those items as an offering on your site. Another example for me, the busy work, was when I launched my morning practice planner, because at that time I was coaching female entrepreneurs and I wanted to help them get a better morning routine. I did the work. This was also during the pandemic when everything was expensive and lead times were crazy. By the time it was all said and done, I had 300 planners shipped to my house that I had to distribute from my house, which doubled the cost of shipping. And it just became a busy thing. I hardly made any money. I think at the end of the day, I made like $6,000 off selling these planners. You can't live a life off selling the planners in the manner that I did. So it was busy work. And the pivot, and I still have some available. I've removed it from my website entirely. So the pivot is oftentimes, are you doing the thing or selling the thing because your clients or customers actually want it, or you just think it's because it's in demand? Look at the signals from the marketplace. It can often be busy work. So here's the anatomy of a successful pivot. I wrote down 4 steps. Number 1, recognize the signals that it's time to pivot. You know instinctively that it is. Don't keep waiting around for somebody to give you the permission. You know it's time when there's diminishing returns on your efforts. Your clients or your customers are telling you they don't want this anymore and they're providing feedback. Your own waning enthusiasm. For me, that was the kicker for PR, when I would say the most important thing was the pitching and the following up. And it was the part that I hated the most. In an entire industry, running the agency, the thing I hated the most was the most important thing, which was clear indication to get out of the world of PR. You'll also see the market shifts and opportunities, but really all the stuff, it really comes down to your gut. Do you want to keep doing this, selling this thing, doing this business, being with that person? The next thing is to preserve what's working while releasing what isn't. So maybe it's not a complete pivot. Maybe it's a 20-degree pivot. What are your core strengths? Assess the things that you're good at. Those are the things that you keep. Have honest evaluation of what you really do need to let go, and get clear on the skills that you can transfer to honing in on that one thing or the new thing. So preserve what's working while releasing what isn't. And maybe for you, it's just baby steps. It's just tiny little adjustments, or it's quick like a Band-Aid. It's a 180-degree pivot or something completely different. And that's okay too. Now you have to manage the emotions of going through this. There's like a lot of work you have to do. There's things you're building or closing down, and conversations you have to have. But the real big thing is managing those emotions and preserving your positive energy. There is a process of grief, of letting go. For me, it was like a happy grief, but also the grief of like just knowing the predictability of an industry that I've been in for so long. Then there's the fear of how you handle the unknown. And worst of all, it's navigating others' reactions to your change. We also say, like, I'm doing this because I'm worried about what they're going to think or what they're going to say, what my parents are going to say. They wanted me to be a doctor, and now I'm going to go off and start this water bottle company. Here is an example of something you can say. You can use this verbatim if you want. Quote, I'm not abandoning what I've built. I'm applying what I've learned to create something even more valuable. The core of who I am and the problems I solve remain consistent. I'm simply finding a more powerful way to deliver those solutions. So you cannot be fearful of the emotions connected to making that change. And finally, step 4 is communicating your pivot effectively. If you have a business and say you run a yoga studio and you used to do like one-on-one sessions and you realize they weren't fruitful anymore, so you're going to get rid of those and just do group classes, you have to decide how you're going to communicate that to your current clients and customers, how you're going to position yourself in the industry and your network, and then loop in the storytelling that incorporates the journey. Most people want to see and hear the behind the scenes. I actually did a poll about a month ago asking people what type of content they want on my podcast. And they all said more behind the scenes stuff. So that's what we're doing. We get the customer feedback, we look at the content we want to share, and we kind of put a plan in place for both of them. So here's a couple other things we can't leave without saying is that there's often an integrated life perspective that happens with these pivots. An example being is that how when a business pivot, it often coincides with life pivots. So for me, the life pivot was that here it is. We are going to be world schooling the boys next year. We just came off the heels of an intense season of back-to-back travel. That the life that we live now could not have happened had I kept staying in the world of public relations, had I kept running my agency. There's no way we could go and live the life that we truly desire by me being an agency owner in the manner that I was running the business. And the integrated life perspective really shot a line on that. There's also the power of building your community, nurturing your community during those pivots, because this is when your network becomes your net worth. When you need help in certain areas, when you need to be introduced to certain people, this is the most important thing, is your community will come in, your network will come in to help you with a hand up to get you to the next milestone. And I want to leave you with this. The most successful business owners don't just build businesses, they evolve them. Your pivot isn't just permitted, it is the path. To know that anything that you do in business and in life is going to require you to course correct, to keep going even when you don't want to, or to pivot altogether. I want to hear all about your pivot stories, or if you have any questions on how to make that pivot in your life, hit me up on Instagram, Renee_Warren. And if you still have time to make it to Kelowna, BC, the Pink Skirt Project is happening on June 12th. So come hang out with 350 women in pink skirts at thepinkskirtproject.com. Until next time, ladies, peace out.